Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for another metal video. Just wanted to show some of the stuff I've been spinning. A couple of these are new pickups. A few of them I've had for a while, and a few of them I've had for a decade or more. And just pulled them off the shelf and gave them a spin. So let's just jump in. This one was actually a recent pickup. I've been looking for this, a real nice copy of this record for quite some time. I just don't run across it anymore. It was one of those records that I used to see in record stores pretty regularly and just held off on buying. So I finally ran across a nice copy and grabbed it. This is one that everybody just kind of wants and they never pop up anymore. It's the first record from LA Guns. This is actually a UK Vertigo pressing. It sounds really good. Definitely worth grabbing. It's a little bit cheaper for some reason than the American pressing, which is not uncommon, unfortunately, but it does sound good. Definitely worth grabbing. Next up, this is a band. Man, I get these two bands mixed up all the time. I can't remember if this is the Belgian Killer or is it Swedish, the other Killer? There's a couple of them, though, and I like both of them. This record is fantastic, though. This is Ready for Hell. This is on Mausoleum. Let's see if it says. This is from Antwerp, which I believe is in Sweden. I could be wrong. You guys can help me out with that. But just really cool early 80s metal. Is this 81, 82 maybe? It doesn't say on here. But, you know, when the new wave of British heavy metal was kicking off, there were quite a few bands that were coming out of Belgium and Sweden that were putting out stuff that was just as good as what was coming out of the UK at the time. And they're really worth checking out. I've been running across a lot of that early Belgian music lately. And I really dig all of it that I grab. Whether it's this band or the other band, they're both worth picking up, though. They're both fantastic bands, and this is a fantastic album. Next up, this is a band. This is a private press. I believe it was a LA band. I could be completely making that up. But it's one of those that maybe it's a Nashville band. It may have been Nashville. My local record store has had this sealed copy for like 7 or 8 years, and I've always looked at it and thought about buying it, and it just looked a little too weak for me, so I passed up on it. And then Lazarus posted on one of the Facebook groups that we're both a part of that he had grabbed the record, and it reminded him of early Motley Crue, and he really dug it. So the next day, when I was at the record store, I went ahead and finally grabbed it. Like I said, I've looked at this probably 1,000 times in the last few years. Every time I think about it, and I just pass it back up. I don't remember how much it was. Probably like 25, 28 bucks, something like that. But a sealed private press from 86 that's in pretty much, mint condition. It's a really fun album, though. It's just what he said. It sounds like early Motley Crue, and I really dug it. If that sounds like something you're into, maybe track that one down. It's Broken Promises from Scarlet. And speaking of 80s glam metal, these guys never were glam metal. I've talked about these guys before. They were more in the vein of Aerosmith. They're real bluesy metal, bluesy hard rock sound. But this is Long Cold Winter from Cinderella. This is not new. I just hadn't listened to it in a while. I really dig Cinderella. I think the record label kind of screwed them by having them dress up, with the big Poison hair and the big glam metal hair. They were always a lot bluesier and a lot better band than a lot of the glam that was coming out in 88, 89. And I think it really did them a disservice. Their first 4 albums are all fantastic. They're all albums that you should have. Again, if you're into that Aerosmith sound, that bluesy Aerosmith sound, this is it. And it's fantastic. This next one, when I went to Brazil earlier, was it earlier this year? Yeah, earlier this year, I picked up a few records. I've shown a few of them in a few videos. This is one I picked up just because I thought it was kind of cool to have. I have multiple copies of this, but it is a Brazilian pressing of Diary of a Madman on Jet Records Brazil. And it sounds really good for a Brazilian pressing. Brazilian pressings, regardless of the genre, regardless of the label, are generally, they have a high noise floor, meaning there's always a little bit of noise in the bottom there, like, you know, that real light hiss that you get in some records. It's real common from the Brazilian records, and I've got them from all eras. I've got some really nice sounding ones. Don't get me wrong, but in general, there's generally a little bit of noise, especially in the 80s. That's not really here. This is a really good sounding pressing of the record, and love Ozzy Osbourne. It was maybe $25 US, so I went ahead and grabbed it. Just thought it was cool. Next up, this is one that my buddy Carcass John has been telling me about for a number of years now. I finally ran across a copy and grabbed it. One of the better death metal albums of the last few years. They're one of the bands that kind of mix traditional progressive death, I guess. It's kind of traditional metal with a progressive slant to it. But this is, what's it called? Hidden History of the Human Race from Blood Incantation. I also really dig that album art. The year, when was this? 2023 maybe? 2022? Does it say? I don't see. Maybe a little older than that. 2019. So yeah. The year this came out, though, this was like the number 1 or 2 for every website, every music magazine that was out there. This is one that, whether you were a thrash guy, a death metal guy, a black metal guy, this is one of those bands that was just kind of universally liked. And I missed it. I ended up buying their debut record from like 2016 in 2021 or 2022, and I really dug it. And for some reason, just never got around to buying this. So I finally have that one in the collection. Fantastic album. This next one is very cool, too. I don't remember where I ran across this. Maybe Rockadrome. I am glad I bought it, though. It's a little different. So After All is a thrash band that I really dig. And I didn't know that they had released this split EP. But what's interesting about this split EP is it's not thrash metal. It's just straight up metal. And it's kind of even in their early albums, they were pretty much a straight up thrash band. So it was kind of cool to hear this kind of mid-tempo, straight up heavy metal. But this is Armageddon Come from After All. And I almost missed it because After All is their logo is different on here too. And when I saw it, I flipped past it and then went back to it on the website and ended up looking it up on Discogs to find out it was the After All that I was a fan of. But it's a split with this band Double Diamond. Now, Double Diamond is not as good as After All, but I really dug one of the songs from them on here, Conquer with Steel. I really love that album art too, just kind of that old school metal front cover. Really dig that. But if you run across it, it's definitely worth having just for the After All songs that are on there. Next up, finally got around to grabbing this. This is the most recent album, Those Who Hunt at Night, from Savage Master. I've loved everything that Savage Master put out, and I love this record too. I kind of miss her early records, though. Stacey Savage is a great front woman. Her singing has gotten better, and it's more straight up metal, whereas her earlier career, she was more of a screamer and she had more of a punk vocal. So it was like it almost had a acid sound, if you guys are familiar with Acid from Belgium, which is a favorite of mine. And now it's gone more towards just a traditional metal sound. And I'm not saying that's bad. I really like this album. I just miss that earlier sound. But still, definitely worth having in your collection. It's still a fantastic album. Next up, these are some I got to thank brother Scott Waters for. He turned me on to them. This is a band that I completely missed. I think their records were 2013, 11, 13, and 15. Some people would dub these guys a thrash band. I would call them more death metal. They kind of ride that line. I'm leaning more towards the death metal side, but this is Battle Cross. I ended up getting all three of their records. Their debut was Pursuit of Honor from 2011. It's kind of dark. I don't know if you guys can see that well. Their second album was War of Will. Really dig the artwork on all of these as well. And then last was Rise to Power. So Backbreaker Records, which is also, can't remember what their other label is that they're associated with, but Backbreaker and a few other labels that Scott works with have been repressing some of the CD only stuff from Metal Blade Records, and they've been knocking it out of the ballpark. Everything they've been releasing is they're all really good albums. A lot of them, like Battle Crosses, are just albums that I completely missed out on. And I've been really digging them and playing them quite a bit. So definitely go to Backbreaker Records. I think it's backbreakerrecords.com. Girder Music, that's who they're associated with. But fantastic if you're into that just old school death thrash. Speaking of heavy music, a little bit of... Why am I drawing a blank? The Cavalera, Max Cavalera. So this is a side project that Max Cavalera is doing with his son Igor, not to be confused with his brother Igor. This is Go Ahead and Die. This is their full length. They did an EP as well, or a mini LP. I don't remember what they called it, but kind of more. Not quite the industrial stuff that he was doing in the 90s, but kind of leaning in that direction. Really good though, really chaotic. It sounds like Max Cavalera. His son is fantastic as well. I don't know who I believe the drummer on here. What band is it? Skeletal Remains. It's one of the drummers that was in Skeletal Remains for a while. Ooh, battery's about to die, so we got to be quick with this one. Another one that Scott turned me on to. This is one of the guys from the band Jerusalem from back in the late 70s and the 80s. This is All for the King. Just really good heavy metal. Darkest Before Dawn. Was spinning this one all day yesterday. Really fantastic. A killer reissue. Glad to finally have this one on vinyl. I've wanted this forever. I hate that they changed the album cover because it had a classic album cover, but this is Betty from Helmet. I was lucky enough to get one signed by Paige Hamilton and the artist who did it, but still, it sounds fantastic. It's definitely worth having. It just sucks that they changed the artwork. That original artwork was it's just an iconic photo, and it's just a fantastic album cover. That said, it sounds great. Definitely worth having in the collection, and happy to finally have it. Sorry, I'm going to speed through these last few so that I can get it recorded before the battery dies. This is one I've always known about. A bunch of people in the VC have shown this over the years, and I ran across a copy at the local record store. But this is Population 2 from Randy Holden. I think this was 72-ish. Randy Holden from Blue Cheer. Really dig this, though. I like this better than the Blue Cheer stuff myself. Just really good early hard rock. This is one that they did in 2015-ish. I believe it was 2015. They did a limited run of 2,000 signed by Randy. There's been another signed reissue that was done recently from Riding Easy, but I've heard they don't sound as good. So I just kind of lucked into the right pressing, but really good. This one, it blew me away. I wasn't expecting much. Their last few albums have been good, but not great. This is the best Deep Purple album in as long as I can remember, at least. I mean, a lot of the musically, it reminds me of the 70s stuff. Really dig it. The vocals on the first song I'm not a huge fan of. His vocals just don't sound great on that one, but I like the rest of the album. It's just fantastic across the board. And I think, was it The Return of Bob Ezrin? I can't remember if this is the first one he's done with him in a while, but man, this album came out killer. This is Equals One from Deep Purple. Highly, highly, highly recommend grabbing that one. Some reissues from Iced Earth. I've always wanted all the Iced Earth stuff on vinyl. A lot of it's been out of print forever, and even the reissues from like 10, 15 years ago were going for over $100. So it's nice that they're finally going back and re-releasing this, most of the catalog. This is Burnt Offerings. I've gotten 4 or 5 of them. They all sound fantastic. They did a great job duplicating the artwork, and I highly recommend grabbing these. It's who did it? Floga Records is the one who's been pressing these. Looks like we're going to make it. And then last but not least, what is his name? On the Metal Roundtable, we interviewed the bassist from this band. I can't remember his name. I feel bad. Angelo Espino from Heretic. And after interviewing him, I ended up pulling this one out because I hadn't listened to it since it came out. And gave this a few spins as well. This is my least favorite of the Heretic albums. I prefer their first album from, was it late 80s? It might have been like 90 when that one came out. And they had one that come out a few years later that I really dug as well. This one is not as good. It's still great. It's still Heretic, though, and it's still a fun listen. So that's it, guys. Wanted to do a quick update, just throw a video up. I've been slacking a little bit. I hope everybody's doing good. That's it, VC. Take care, guys.